so I recycle, but what if, like, do I need to start composting? You know, what I do this, but I'm not doing this. So is it even worth it? And, you know, I really want people to get out of that mindset, because even if you decide I'm no longer going to shop at Target for clothes or Forever 21 at clothes, that's better than even if you're not thrifting, or even if you're not going to a secondhand store, even if you're not, you know, renting or loaning clothes out or swapping. So I guess, like, I'd love to, you know, hear from other people and seeing what, you know, bothers them about the whole sustainability issue, and kind of what they do in their own lives or what they would like to do. I'd love to kind of open up the conversation and kind of see what you think, you know, you'd like to see in the world as well. So feel free to jump in at any point.
I would like to ask a question, and that is, or get a little more explanation of the rent the clothes thing from somebody who just spent, it seems like years going through my clothes. Can you mention a little bit about that?
So it kind of started with this company called Rent the Runway several years ago, and they kind of started with the idea of renting designer clothes, because a lot of people couldn't afford designer clothes, and it was mainly for, you know, like nicer events and weddings and things like that. And it's really grown from there, where I know several people who just get their wardrobe, everyday wardrobe, from places like Rent the Runway. You can basically, there's different tiers. You can have maybe a tier where you get 5 new items of clothing per month, and you pay a flat fee. If you want to end up keeping that an item of clothing, you can get a discount through that company, and you can actually keep it for a discounted price. And with this, you know, renting system, it just, not only does it help save money, because a skirt might cost, a well-made sustainable skirt might cost you $150, but wearing it, how many times do you have to wear it to, like, make it worth it? So why not just rent it, have someone else wear it? They do an amazing job at cleaning it. It's a very simple process, and I think a lot more businesses are even going to this business model. H&M, which is actually a fast fashion retailer, is adopting that business model as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the fast fashion retailers, you know, go about that. Because one of the main issues in this whole sustainability in fashion is greenwashing, where you'll see a company say all the right things, eco-friendly this, environmentally conscious this, and they aren't kind of backing it up with any stats or data or you know, seals of any kind and like that. So it's a very hard game to kind of wrap your head around sometimes, because you have to do your own research, and you really have to look into, you know, the company's motives behind it, and are they just trying to be the next cool, you know, green brand, or is that really one of the main things behind their motivations?
Are these new clothes that you're talking about? Because I'm on the other end. I'm the person that, you know, has the clothes that are out the kazoo.
For the renting?
Yeah.
Yeah, the renting are new clothes to begin with, but then they have basically warehouses that they store the clothes and clean the clothes, and then they become secondhand clothes, third hand, fourth hand, you know, because they keep on being worn. But, you know, at the end of the day, if they're just being worn once by each person, I mean, that's fantastic, because we can basically get, I mean, tenfold use out of an item that otherwise maybe just would have been hanging in a closet. So that's the end goal.
Okay.
So Abby, there's a question here asking, how do people get over it? And Alyssa, you might want to speak to this as well. Used to the fact that these clothes aren't hygienic because other people have been wearing them.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, that's definitely, I think just thrifting in general can be, can get a bad rap when it comes to that. But you'd be surprised what some of these places do to make sure things are hygienic, especially the rent-a-runways, the rental companies, that's their whole business model. They have deals with dry cleaners in place, that they get like the best, you know, dry cleaning deals with them. So that's never an issue. Honestly, if you wear your skirt once, you're probably not going to clean it as well as the Rent the Runway places are. So it's basically like coming to you like new. And if they aren't able to clean it in the way that passes all their guidelines, then they take that item out of rotation and recycle it in a different way.
And I've even had like a cotton dress. So I'm like a 6 a month subscriber. Yeah. So I have a huge, it's my entire wardrobe now. So like a garment maybe that came and maybe it was worn too much and probably should have put out to pasture, recycled in a different way, just because I think maybe they saw it was cotton, they packed it because they put it in a garment bag, send it, and it ended up having kind of like lines from the hanger, you know how there might be a white outline or something. And I called them and I wanted to wear that for my birthday actually, and I got it the day before. They sent me a brand new one overnight. And so anytime that there's an issue, their customer service, I just think the world of what their mission is and where they're growing. But they're the number one largest, according to their website, number one largest, they do in-house whatever you're trying, dry cleaning.
Yeah.
So yeah, their inspections are pretty good. Certainly I've gotten things that maybe I found this didn't tie correctly, or it was missing a slip that should have been with it. The person before it didn't put it with it. But they're pretty quick to resolve those issues.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've only done about like 15 times for different events. I haven't gotten to the whole monthly subscription yet. I'm in the phase of trying not to buy any new clothes. I'm kind of trying to try different aspects, like no new clothes for a while. Then I did thrifting. I loved thrifting. It became a hobby, honestly. And it's kind of fun. You go and you find a new, you find like kind of a diamond in a rough type thing. And it's kind of exciting. So,
do these people purchase things from designers?
Yeah. Yep. They have hundreds of brands now up there on Rent.
They're almost all designer clothes though, yeah. Or higher, or J. Crew and
about little designers like us.
No, I don't believe so.
No,
I haven't
I'm
seen
trying
that.
to think if there is one out there that is starting with smaller ones. There's a lot of rental companies out there now. I'm actually going to be sending out a resource list after this with like Instagram accounts to follow and brands to kind of watch out for. So I'll add some of those rental companies on there too for you to check them out because they're pretty awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Abby, in your research and your what you've been be able to find, and you touched on this a little bit about fast fashion. How do you see this issue affecting the fashion industry in the future? Do you think fashion is going to die? What do you see is going to happen in our industry?
I mean, I don't think it's a very loaded question, but I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, but we already are seeing, the effects of this movement. I know Forever 21 declared bankruptcy and closed several hundred stores. I think what a big thing that needs to be done is just the social media influence and all those influencers out there that are, supporting the fast fashion brands like Fashion Nova and, H&M and things like that, where they're like, only cost me under $20. Like a lot of those influencers, we really need to, support the sustainable brands out there. I went to a sustainability and fashion conference in Portland last year, and that just was the main thing, is just supporting sustainable brands and sustainable brands working together, because quite honestly, a lot of these sustainable brands are small. And so say they want to have their packaging be more eco-friendly, just to, buy a poly bag or a pouch that's more sustainable, the minimums can be, 10,000, 100,000, and small brands aren't going to be able to, don't need that many. Maybe they only need 5,000. So it was pretty cool to hear that what had started to be to being done was some of these brands were basically reaching out to each other and being like, I can't reach this minimum, but do you need these eco-friendly poly bags as well? Let's all go together on it, each get 1,000 and meet the minimum. So it's really just, you know, a team effort at this point, both with, you know, the influencers who are interested in sustainability and, you know, getting the message out basically, because I think even the, you know, the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation, even though we're probably the most interested in fast fashion in the past, we're also very interested in, you know, making the world a better place. So it's definitely, you know, the time to do it right now.
So there's a question here, are sustainable brands affordable? That's one reason people buy clothes at Target. To me as well, and you can speak to this as well, but I think it's something we have to educate the consumer to as well, because we're so used to buying cheap clothes.
Right.
That no, it's not as affordable as it is, but I think it's going to be really hard to educate the consumers that to buy something of quality that's going to last longer.
Right. It's all a mindset shift, because even for me, it was hard to kind of get over, you know, the idea of being able to buy this cute shirt at Forever 21 or buy, you know, this cute sports bra at Target or whatnot. It's a mindset shift. It's just like anything. You have to decide to not, or to limit it, you know, even if you need to, like, you don't have to just completely go cold turkey, but I see another question from Morgan here about more transparency. And that's another way that brands are trying to get people to buy sustainable options. They will literally break down why they came to get to this price. Most recently, I saw one that was like $185 sweater. And if you broke down the labor cost, the material cost, the sourcing cost, just to find, you know, the time it takes to source a sustainable fabric and method, and then to make sure you're picking a manufacturer that uses green, and it's called green and clean procedures to manufacture the item, whether that's organic cotton rather than regular cotton. That saves a lot of water consumption if you use organic rather than regular. So when they break it down like that, it makes sense. That $185 sweater, they were only profiting $18 from that. Like it's pretty crazy when you break it down, and it's just a mindset shift, really. You have to realize, like, okay, this is a nice pair of jeans or a nice leather jacket that I know I can wear for years to come. And it's hard because it's not everyone's going to have that mindset. I don't see fast fashion going away completely, probably ever, sadly. But if we stop buying it, they'll stop producing it. Okay, so.
And I think the other thing too that maybe we need, that the public needs to understand, is that clothes are cheap and labor's cheap.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother issue with sustainability, is the labor issue. And there's still these factories that are paying their workers nothing,
right,
in order for people to be able to have.
Yeah, and that's the whole social and ethical side of the business, which is actually pretty sad. And I was kind of telling Denise the other day about kind of what we've been experiencing, or the fashion industry has been experiencing during this whole COVID era, because a lot of brands have wanted to have canceled orders, and have basically wanted to try to get out of paying their factories, and AKA the workers. And so not only have some of those clothes just been completely wasted, and, you know, will probably end up in a landfill because they canceled the orders that were in halfway through production or completely produced. There's this awesome fashion revolution group that has basically been working tirelessly over the last few months, calling out big brands like Gap and obviously, like they have Old Navy, Athleta, like all of these brands under there. I know they just got Gap to confirm that they will be paying all of their orders that they either canceled, or working out some sort of a deal. So that's what it takes, is to basically shine a light on these big brands, that being like, and just let them know you're not doing anything right. That's kind of what the whole world is doing right now, finally shining a light on the issues that are happening so we can do something about it. And that's what it'll take, you know. Bad press, it gets things rocking and rolling.
So one thing that we talked about, that you and I talked about last week too, is, and one of my biggest issues, and anybody who's actually a designer or a seamstress or something throws out tons of scraps of fabric. And that's one thing that really drives me nuts, is throwing out little scraps of fabric. So are there places that will recycle fabric? I know that's a huge issue because of, I've always felt like, because there's so many blends, so you got a polyester cotton blend, it's hard to recycle that.
Yeah.
But,
no, yeah, and I was telling Denise that there are companies that are helping to recycle items that are otherwise kind of hard to recycle. Like a company called Fab Scrap. It's based in New York, and they actually have a facility where they bring in, or people send them scraps, they separate them, and they sell them. Minimum, I think, is like a yard on their website, and you can buy recycled fabric from there. And you know, they'll even maybe put a cute little package together of all like pinks of different colors or things like that. So if you want to do any of your sewing or crafting, you can use that. They even have rolls of fabric, so businesses like me, you know, could come and be like, I want to produce a cute little accessory pouch, what kind of fabric do you have? And that's great for me too, because sometimes the minimums, you know, are hard to meet for the fabrics that I want, and still be able to be affordable. So there's also another company that you can send your socks and underwear and t-shirts, you know, under t-shirts or whatnot, that you obviously can't give to Goodwill, but otherwise, what else are you gonna do with them? You know, like I use old t-shirts for rags and cut them up, but you know, I'm not gonna do that with underwear and socks and whatnot. So, you know, there's just so many different ways that, you know, businesses can help out. You'd be surprised, like when I saw that there was a company in that was making profits in different items out of used underwear and socks. I'm like, gosh, it really is, the sky is the limit with what people can do with this. So yeah, I'll add those to the resource list, or I have those on the resource list as well. So I'll be sending that, or Denise will be emailing that out after.
Yeah, we'll make sure that gets up on the website as well. Yeah. So there's another question here about how can schools improve their sustainability with students, teaching their students? I know it's a huge push in the universities and the fashion schools right now. They're really pushing that sustainability issue.
Yeah, and I mean, I know when I went in Lincoln, I don't think we had a class on sustainability, but I think it could be a whole different sustainability class. I'm guessing they maybe already have one, but it is a whole different animal, because there's actually there's this list, and I can add a link to it to the resource list. It's called the TED 10 different ways that a designer can basically design and produce a fashion collection with sustainability and ethics in mind. And I mean, it can be anything from making sure that your manufacturers have like the green seal, where everything in their manufacturing facility is green. It can be anything from designing based on nature items and making sure that everything is natural. It's really crazy, and I think that's really interesting. And I would love everyone to click on that link. It's called the TED 10, because it's definitely eye-opening, the different ways that you can design. Another way that I try to use as well is the way that you make your pattern of your clothing, to make sure that when it's laid out on the roll of fabric, that you're having the least amount of scrap fabric as possible. So, you know, this awkward sleeve over here, you know, maybe don't design it in the way that, you know, would make it be an awkward angle or something, so there's a ton of scrap fabric. So it's pretty cool, all the different ways that people are designing. And, you know, you're not going to be able to get all 10, you know, items checked off the list. It's just start somewhere, and then that's what it takes.
So how do you feel about Fashion Weeks?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I love Omaha's lately because I know to this last one, there were several, or at least a few sustainable brands that had some beautiful clothing. One of the brands even held one of my Chant bags going down the road. And I do like the bigger fashion weeks in New York and whatnot. There's always room for improvement. Obviously, some are doing better than others. And just even the inclusivity of like sizes and things like that, I think just we're moving in the right direction. But I mean, with the glamour and the glitz that comes with that, it's hard to promote fashion industry in general. Sometimes I even have a hard time being like, here I am promoting you to buy more. You know what I mean? Like maybe you already have a clear bag, but here I am being like, get one that's more sustainable. So it's kind of this weird orthodox that us as designers in the sustainability world kind of have to fight ourselves about, because we are technically asking you to buy more stuff when technically that's probably the thing that we just need to stop doing. So there is this weird kind of meta issue with the whole thing. But as long as there's, you know, big designers like Stella McCartney and things like that who are trying to do good, we're going in the right direction. So,
well, I think one thing too, and it's interesting because this has kind of come out of COVID, is that a lot of designers are cutting back on how many seasons they're designing. And because there were so many seasons, clothes coming out all the time, if they cut back on seasons, it's less production, it's less clothing that's going to be out there. And maybe that helps the mind shift of, well, I don't need to buy something new every time the resort collection comes out or something like that.
And that's another issue with the fast fashion. I read the other day that Zara has up to about 24 collections per year. H&M has 16 to 18. So yeah, at least I think what's good about with the designer brands, obviously they have a lot fewer, but we can't all afford the designer brands. So what I love it when the designer brands kind of have, you know, a collection or a brand that's a little bit lower than the main brand. I think that's a great option too, because they still have the resources of a bigger brand, so they can, you know, design with sustainability an option for a little bit less. But yeah, it's not a perfect science yet at all. So that's just kind of the issue that we're all facing as designers right now. How's this baby? Oh, that's awesome, Beth. My family extended family passes baby children's clothing along to the next baby that is born. That's a great way. Do I make things other than bags? As of right now, I also make these little zip pouches, and those are made out of waxed canvas, cotton canvas. So it's made out of natural, or it's covered with natural beeswax, so it gives it that, I guess, water resistant capabilities. Another thing that I'm working on right now is 100% recycled plastic keychains. So I've actually worked with the Do Space and the prototype lab that I'm basically 3D printed a mold that I can put in recycled plastics from like milk jugs and things like that, and it molds beads to basically then turn into keychains. So just trying to think of creative ways to use products in a recycled way, but then, you know, you also have to think about their end life, you know what I mean? So if I can create a product that at the end of the day, if it's broken in some way, then can be recycled, like literally in your recycle bin. That was kind of the idea behind these beads. And I'm also creating this little plastic clutch that is 100% recycled plastic that could essentially at the end of the day be thrown in your recycle bin if ever, you know, it needed to. So the end life is definitely, you should be thinking of the end life of a product when you design it. And it definitely starts in the design room when it comes to the end life of a product. What was the material you use in your bags? It's called TPU, thermoplastic polyurethane. It's still a synthetic plastic because obviously there's not a clear material that isn't man-made at this point. But I am working on looking into using corn. It's called there's actually a place in Blair, where I'm actually from, that produces these. It starts as like saran wrap type materials, plastic containers for food type of thing, but they're made out of bio corn-based products. And so I'm kind of working with a few textile scientists to see if it could be turned into a material that could actually be used for a purse and not fall apart after one use. So it's interesting to kind of use these different technologies and sciences in the fashion industry as well. There's products being made out of sugarcane now, and mushrooms, orange peels, pineapple. So it's pretty cool. It's really cool what's happening. Is avant-garde sustainable, as it is not worn even as equal as fast fashion? I mean, avant-garde, that isn't even really wearable. That, to me, that just seems like it's for like a one-time wear. It's not really put out to the public. It's not produced in bulk. So I guess I don't really have the best answer for that, but at least it's not produced in bulk. What about recycling McDonald's Happy Meal toys in our designs? Yeah, if you can do it, do something with those toys. I've thought about that too. I got a buy one, get one free Happy Meal with my mom last week, and we both got the toys, and I'm like, I feel so guilty about these toys. What do we do with them? So go for it. How do you source these fabrics? You do it, I can't. We'll see. I will, maybe I can melt down the plastic toys into my keychains. So how do I source these fabrics? So for me, I was very lucky to have Pam Finn be my mentor. I worked with her for a year when I first moved back to Nebraska, and she has 30 years of experience of sourcing and production in China. And she actually has a company over there with her partner. So she was able to hook me up with her partner there, who helped me produce the clear bags. But even with them, they were used to using the PVC. So I just got on, it's a website called Alibaba, and just just searched, probably talked to about 10 different companies that worked with PVCs and TPUs and things like that. I would get sent samples. I probably got sent 10 different samples and picked the one that I wanted. And then it ordered it from that company, and it was shipped to Pam Finn's partner's facility in China. In terms of the wax canvas that I made the zip pouches out of, I actually found that on Etsy because you can get smaller runs there. But when I lived in Los Angeles, there's just streets after streets after streets of fabrics in the downtown fashion district there. So you can definitely, obviously I'm doing it from Nebraska. You don't have to be living in a big city where you can, have everything at your fingertips. Pretty much everything is online nowadays anyway. So I would definitely recommend, there's different fabric shops online as well, but to find the sustainable fabrics, you can also, I'll add something to a resource list so you can check out all the really cool fabrics, like I think it's called Peentex for pineapple, the mushroom fabric. I'll add a link so you can see all the different types of fabrics that are made out of natural resources. What are overseas manufacturers doing to help with sustainability? This has definitely been something that's been hard for me to, I guess, verify, because I'm not there. I haven't been able to go to China yet to really oversee things. So I'm just trusting that this when I ask if, they're an ethical company, like what their facilities look like, how they create their fabrics and whatnot, how they ship their fabrics, I'm trusting what they're telling me is true. And so that's why there's been these different types of seals essentially that you can get, where a company can apply to get basically certifications that they're a green company or this company. I'm blanking on the names that they're called, but again, I can add those to the resource list, but they essentially get then the check mark of approval that yes, they're using these methods and these, ethics in their business, but it costs money for them to do that. So a lot of them don't go for it. And the ones that do maybe are a little bit more expensive to work with. So it's definitely hard as a designer in the production game, especially when you're small and funds aren't large to navigate these waters. But it just, at the end of the day, you have to do your research. You have to know what questions to ask, and then just do better. Like there's already things that I'm wanting to do better. Like when I got the waxed canvas, it's just regular cotton. And then in my research, I realized like, oh wow, I really do need to use organic cotton, even because I wanted to use a material that wasn't synthetic. So I was like, okay, great. I'm not using polyester, I'm using cotton. And then I realized how much water that takes. One pair of jeans, it takes about, I wrote it down here, 2,000 gallons of water to produce one pair of jeans because of how much water it takes to produce cotton. And that's more than enough for one person to drink 8 cups per day for 10 years. Just because cotton takes that much water consumption. It's nuts. So I'm even, I'm trying to do better too. It's not something that you're going to get right away. How can we be sure that a particular sustainable garment is actually recycled? Like as in, if they're saying that it was recycled? Okay. Yeah, and that it's you have to do the research. You have to make sure, like, where did it come from? So a lot of companies, or not a lot of companies, but some companies will even have a life cycle. I saw this one really cool brand that had almost, it looked like those when you go to the library and you have those book checkout cards. And that was the tag. So every time it was worn by someone, they wrote in their name, and then it was sent back, and then the next person wrote in their name, and maybe they would write a little note on it. So it's all about research, because I mean, as much as you would like to believe all the companies that are saying this was recycled, this was made in a green facility, they should have a blog post, or at least some press articles, or if they can't afford the certifications, at least say like, this is the goal for the next 3 years to try to get to this certification, something like that. And that's something I even need to do better on, with my website, to really just detail the whole process, just how I've been detailing it to you. So that's something that I'm going to be adding to my website as well.
I put this up there, but what do you need to be certified? How can you get that green certification?
I don't have the information off the top of my head, but I can definitely include the links. There's definitely a listing of items that they have to prove. I think they even have like auditors or inspectors come by and check it out if it's like if it's a facility and things like that. But I'll add a link to that. I don't know it off the top of my head.
So is there somewhere that you have to apply for that then, and they give you the certification?
Yeah. Yep. There's like 3 or 5 different main ones, depending on exactly like if you're a designer or a facility or things like that. So again, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'll add that to the resource list, because it is interesting, and it is something that I've been looking into, but I'm still small in it, and sometimes it costs up to like $5,000 to get certified. So one thing I have done is I have partnered with a company called 1% for the Planet. So 1% of all my sales goes to this company called 1% for the Planet, and they do all things for the betterment of the environment. So that's at least one thing that I've done now. Obviously, I'd love to increase that number as I get bigger from 1% to 5% and things like that.
So are there like a list of things that you have to have in order to be sustainable, or is it like one or two things that make it sustainable, or how does that work?
That kind of goes back to that whole list of the TED 10, where there's multiple things that you can do to basically be considered a sustainable business or sustainable brand, but it's nearly impossible to do all 10. Based on the course that I went to when I went to Portland, if you have 2 or even 3, that's pretty awesome for a brand to have. So I'm interested now to like read up again on these certifications to see how many you have to have, but it's not like you have to have every single item checked off a list in order to get it. You have to, I think it has to do also with carbon emissions, like how much your carbon footprint, and if you're doing anything to counteract that, like what a lot of brands are doing too, which I'll include on the list. There's brands like Everlane, and Patagonia is really great, where they will offset their carbon emissions. So obviously you can't produce without having 0 carbon emissions. You obviously are going to have some. So maybe they'll plant trees in place of the carbon that they use to produce their items, or they'll give a donation to an environmental organization to offset their carbon footprints and things like that. So I'll include that on the resource list, because it's pretty cool to see what some of these brands are doing and the things that they show on their websites to be as transparent as possible. All right. Yeah, well, I think you'll be adding the recording to the website. So yeah, I'm excited to share this resource list with you guys too. I definitely encourage you to check out their Facebook accounts or Instagram if you have Instagram, because they post some pretty interesting factoids and kind of keeps you up to date on what the new policies are and what new things that people are doing.
And there's a lot of videos and things out as well. And I'll put some links to those up as well that you guys can look at.
And if anyone listens to podcasts, I included some of those on the resource list as well. There's some pretty awesome sustainable fashion podcasts out there.
Is there any other questions that anyone else has, or things that you're doing to help with the sustainability? That'd be interesting to see if anyone else is trying to, what they're trying to do. I'd love to hear
if anyone's what they kind of are doing or what they hope to start doing.
I posted a question and I'll just repeat it. What's the best way to get the word out that you're looking for scraps that are bridal or gutsy? I've contacted bridal shops and they send them off to the tailors, and I can never get anything. But just little pieces work for me because I make hats.
Okay. I mean, off the top of my head, I would say Facebook, the marketplaces, the swaps. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's also Facebook groups for that. I can do a quick search and see. Facebook groups have become really big in the last 2 years. And then, like I said, there's also the fab scrap, but you have to pay for those. So I'm sure there's people with scraps that you can just get for free as well. So I'll look into the groups thing. I'll make a note.
Okay, thank you.
One thing, Margie, that I'd like to do here at FIM, and as I said, I want to keep this conversation going and even put together maybe a little task force of things that we can do here locally in order to help with, my big thing is the fabric scraps. And I'm going to put together a fabric swap at some point where people can bring in their fabrics that they've got sitting around that they would like for somebody else to be able to utilize. We have lots of fabric pieces here that people could come in and just, you know, come in on a day when I'm working and look through our fabric bins, and I'm perfectly willing to let people have scraps. And one thing about the fab scrap that's great, it's a great idea, but you have to have yardage. And a lot of times we end up with little pieces like, you know, 1/8 of a yard or a scrap here, a scrap there. I'd like to put together, I know there's artists that want fabric scraps, so maybe we can put together a program where we're giving artists fabric scraps for their artwork. Or somebody was saying people collect, you know, scraps to make beanbag chairs out of. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking at, of how can we get rid of the materials that we just have here at FIM. That's just what we have here at FIM. There's so much more. To maybe help the community, the Omaha community, to be able to recycle some of these materials. And that's kind of where I'd like to see us being able to help with that.
Denise,
So.
I've actually gotten a piece of, and you may remember this, and maybe this was before you were there, but there was a roll of Dupioni that was lime green, and I actually got a large piece of that. Do you remember that, or was that before you?
Maybe, but we have a lot of fabric here, so yeah. I'd like to be able to, you know, have people utilize that. In fact, I have a woman, one of my students, who has a friend who passed away, who has tons of fabric that she needs to now find a new home for. So she's bringing it here. So I want to open that up for people who want to be able to use it. Another thing, we were able to use a lot of it when we did our 10,000 mask project a couple months ago. We used a lot of our scraps for the masks, and so that's another way to use it. There's a lot of ways to use it, and that's one of the things I want to be able to work on here at FIM. So
there's a few more here. Audio says, can you speak to the slow fashion movement, specifically the made to order style of production? So yeah, that's definitely an interesting you know, business model as well, and it's part of the TED 10. I don't know a lot about it since I don't do it, but I do know that we have a brand here in Omaha that I work with through the Startup Collaborative of Omaha called Stature, and she is making made-to-order clothing for tall women. You know, that's hard to buy. So she's been doing an awesome job just with the way that it's produced, because you basically can't have a large bulk production that helps with costs, or you can only you can't finish like a hem on the sleeve, or you can't finish a hem on the bottom of a pants. You basically have to almost have two different I guess phases of production. The one phase where you just produce it without the finishing, and then the second phase where then once it's ordered, you know, tailoring it custom made. So it's definitely kind of a whole different animal. There is a lot of cool technology out there now that people, or that, you know, brands are using, to where you can, I read about this one where they had created a Facebook app, I think it was more for men's clothing, where you could literally take a picture of your body standing, and they had figured out a technology to basically figure out your measurements from that and create tailored clothing just from, you know, what the picture and what you've entered into the app. So it's definitely becoming a bigger and more easily, I guess, they're making it easier with the technology. Technology is big in terms of the tailoring type thing. What else we got here? I thought I saw another one. I'm looking into botanical dyes, less toxic dye, and veggie fruit flowers. Yes, that's awesome. There's so many cool dyes now, and that's, again, one of the TED 10 is using natural dyes, because the dyeing process can be very harmful to water, to the oceans and things like that. So I saw another one.
I think we'll do a couple more questions, Abby, and then
yeah. I saw just one more. I want to redesign upcycle discarded clothing into new clothing items. Do you have any ideas, thoughts, recommendations? That I love to start with I've done that too with thrifting. Obviously, that's probably where you're getting your clothes. Do you want to sell them, or do you just want to buy them? But I think that's a great idea. I guess I don't have too many recommendations other than thrifting is great for that. You can even find cool fabrics. You can buy multiple pieces of clothing and you know, make them into one.
I think sell them. Sell them. I'd like to sell them.
Yeah.
Beth, to your point, I wish sewing skills were taught in the high school setting. The high schools actually are stepping up a little bit. South High has a great program here in Omaha. And I was really impressed at how many students there were in Fashion Week last spring that took part in Fashion Week and are actually learning these sewing skills. So I think that they are starting to institute that more into high schools as something that's important, especially with this renewed interest in fashion design that a lot of younger students are having. So that's really encouraging, I think. So I think you'll see more of that in the future. So I think that's really great. Does anybody have any more questions? We will get all of this information up on the website for sure. It's going to be a lot. Again, I want to keep the conversation going and try and figure out, again, as ways that we as a community can help with this issue. And I also will be sending out a survey. So if you guys would mind filling that out so that we can keep more programming like this going and things that you're interested in learning about or having workshops in going forward. So are there any other questions that anyone has at this time?
Well, thank you so much, Denise, for having me, by the way.
Thanks, Abby, so much for spending your Saturday morning with us, and appreciate everybody that was involved, and looking forward to having more of these kind of workshops. Definitely. Alyssa, do you have any more you want to add?
No, I think the idea of continuing the conversation and being able to do each of our parts, I mean, even just as a consumer myself, I'm obviously not a designer, but it reminds me to, you know, use those practices and do what you can. I think it's extremely important as people in our fashion community that we take the charge and be vocal about it for sure. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
All right, so I will make sure that I have, you know, let you guys all know when that's up on the website. We'll try and get it up this week. And this will be recorded if you wanted to share that with anyone else. And we'll be in touch soon. So thank you all for joining, and have a great rest of your weekend.
You too. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.
All right, bye-bye.